Good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming out to the press briefing with the Department of Environment and our project partners on the Darwin Marine Parks Assessment Project. This is likely to be the final press conference for the Darwin project, this particular project that we've been running over the last 3 years. And so we just wanted to take the opportunity to really present sort of a wrap-up presentation and to give you, the press, an opportunity to ask us questions, if you have any, about the results of the project and sort of where we go from here. Just really the focus is going to be primarily on the public consultations that we concluded in early to mid-December last year. You all will recall that we made an announcement sort of in September, October last year that we were going out to the public to consult with them on the revised proposals for our enhanced system of marine parks. And we, in fact, did that. We had meetings in each district of Grand Cayman, as well as one in each of the sister islands during the period from sort of mid-October to early December 2012. All of those meetings were really well attended, and we got a lot of very useful feedback from each of the meetings. We also have, as a result of those public meetings, actually been engaging with a couple of the districts who took the initiative to provide us with extra feedback on the proposals that's specific to their district and that their sort of particular district needs. And in particular, the MLA from East End, Mr. Arden McLean, and the Community Development Officer, Ms. Delmira Bodden from East End, have been working very closely with us and the community and have allowed us to engage further with the community on those proposals, and we've now got some very specific feedback from them, which we're taking a close look at. We also hope actually to meet today with the MLA, Mr. Ezard Miller from Northside, to hear his community's views in more detail. We also have had a letter from Mr. Moses Kirkconnell on the Brac about Cayman Brac's feedback, and just sort of generally. And we also actually had quite a lengthy discussion following the Cayman Brac meeting with a number of the attendees at the Cayman Brac meeting, where we actually looked at revising the proposals for the Brac right after the meeting on the Brac. There was some interest from Little Cayman. Mr. Frankie Bodden was going to come back to us. We haven't heard yet from him, but we're still hoping that he'll get to us in time for us to take the feedback into account. Having said that, we also got individual forms completed at each of those meetings. And also people who visited the poster presentation, which was open at the DOE for about 2 months, where we had posters and maps up of the proposals for 2 months, and we would sort of go along and explain if anybody came in to see that presentation at the DOE. We also took a mobile presentation out with us at each of the district events and had that up and available, staffed for public, for the opportunity that the public could come in prior to the meeting, see the proposals, understand what we were trying to get across, and then be sort of more informed to engage with us at the public meeting. So they were up for the day of the meeting and staffed by Department of Environment staff. During that period of time, we also appeared on TV several times, radio. We had an aggressive social media campaign on Facebook, etc., making sure that we got all of the information out, all of the main points that were being sort of put to the public in the meetings. We tried to get those over in sort of various media and at various times. So we hope that the public, every member of the public, has had an opportunity in some way to engage with us in responding to the proposals. We really tried to open ourselves up as much as possible to the public so that we could get a genuine feedback from the public on the proposals. We're very encouraged by the feedback that we received so far. I would say that almost 2/3 of the individual forms that we got from the public meetings and from people coming in to see the presentation at the DOE were supportive of the proposals, and we're encouraged because those feedback forms came in sometimes from meetings where we had sort of quite controversial meetings, particularly in West Bay, Cayman, Brac, for example. And in even taking those two districts into account, we still got a majority of support for the proposal. So we're very encouraged about that. This week, we're very lucky to have our project partners on my immediate left, James Byrne from the Nature Conservancy and Dr. John Turner from Bangor University here. And we are at present engaged in considering each individual comment that we've received on the proposal. So that's the other point that I would like to stress is that, while we sort of took a general read of each district's position or the feedback from each district as we went around, we're also taking very careful note of each individual comment. And I'm going to turn over now, I think, to John and James to talk in more detail about that process and how we're going to move forward from there.
Thank you. Yes, this week we are working through all of the feedback that we have received, and we're considering each comment in turn, and we're looking to see how we can respond to those comments. We're reading those comments very carefully, interpreting what we think was meant. Sometimes it was not always clear, sometimes it was quite complex. We had many very valuable suggestions from the public on how the marine parks could be improved. Many people were indicating their support, but some were actually indicating how their support might be best taken into account. The sorts of suggestions that have been proposed vary from specific boundaries of marine protected areas, for instance, suggestions on other ways in which we may enforce or protect the marine resources of Cayman. And so we're looking at each one very seriously and working out how it can be combined with the feedback from others to essentially adjust and tweak the system. Overall, we have to remember that the system, the Marine Protected Area system, has actually been designed on the basis of strong scientific principles and a lot of knowledge that has come from the field work done by the Department of the Environment and by the project team who have been working with DOE for the last 3 years. So we have a lot of data on which to formulate the plans for the marine protected areas. And obviously this data has been discussed. We've presented it at the district meetings. So we're now combining that data with the views of the public to ensure that we get a system that's going to be sustainable. That's the most important part here. We have, I think, given good arguments as to why the marine protected areas are so important to Cayman. And now what we've got to do is ensure that they're actually going to work for the people in the different districts, that they will be located in the most acceptable places, such that scientifically they will actually work, do the tasks that they're designed for, but also that people can live and work with them and around them.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And really what we're doing is, building on what John said there a little bit, is taking each of those comments and looking at them in that context and realizing that there are two really key things for MPAs to be successful. One is the scientific principles, that the whole system needs to meet those, so it's going to work on an ecological basis. And the other component is the social context, that has to work for the people of Cayman Islands. And really it's a balance between those two of what is actually going to work out best for the people of Cayman, as well as keeping with those scientific principles so that it actually has the best chance to work ecologically. And we've been evaluating the comments on that and seeing how we can strike that balance. One of the really encouraging things that I have seen through all of this is the amount of support that we've seen come in from the people of the Cayman Islands, and their support and recognition of the hard work that has gone into getting to this point, and over the last 26 years, and how the MPAs that have been around have helped, and how they've had success, but things have still gone down, and that it needs to expand out and be able to really make sure that they exist in the future. The Cayman Islands has stood out across the Caribbean region as a leader over this time, has really been innovative and looking forward to that. And it's set in motion over this time where a lot of other countries have looked to it and looked to see how they've done it and how they can actually improve their systems. And as the Nature Conservancy, we're working across the Caribbean with many the other countries and trying to do similar things. We've been working in Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, St. Vincent, as well as Jamaica, Dominican Republic, and Bahamas, and some other countries across the Caribbean. And they're all taking these same steps and moving forward as well. And they've created a group together called the leaders have come together called the Caribbean Challenge, where they actually have challenged their fellow countries to join them in doing this. And they're working to do the same type of process. And it's really looking at it from this bigger picture from the whole Caribbean, where we can see that the Caribbean as a whole can survive. One thing, we talk a lot about how the islands are interconnected within Cayman, but we have to look at it as actually part of this bigger Caribbean basin, and how all the countries together can actually work together doing very similar things and getting protected areas like this established, that we can really see a bigger advance across the region. And I'm really excited to see Cayman once again leading on some of the innovative ways of moving this forward and making sure that it is something that is going to work for the people of Cayman.
Okay, so we really would like to just open up a conversation with you if you have questions for us, specifically on the proposals and the public consultation. We'll be happy to answer those.
While people are thinking about questions, if I could just add to what Gina, John, and James have said, one of the interesting things, or on a personal note, that has come out of the review process, and we discussed this yesterday, is that in the feedback comments that we've received, the feedback forms, some of them are constructive, some of them are not very, they're kind of not in support. But one thing that's clear in all of it is that people really understood the principles that we were trying to get across. It was clear from the feedback that the presentations had worked, they'd done their job that we'd planned for them. People understood why we needed to do this. And a lot of people realized, that this is a necessary step. Some people are still a little reluctant to do the kind of the crucial part, which is is basically to make the sacrifices that are needed. We're trying to get people to understand that, not to see this as more rights that are being limited, but more in fact that these are people's positive actions to try to encourage stuff for the future, and that this isn't a taking away exercise. It's just a fact that people have to make sacrifices, and some of that did come across, but that really is the next important point that we need to really drive home, that these changes are needed. Yes, it does mean that we have to change the way we do things, but ultimately, this is for the longevity of the marine environment in the Cayman Islands.
Norma Connolly, the Caymanian Compass. I wonder if you can give us some examples of anything that you have changed in your recommendations for the marine parks based on the feedback that you've had from the public? Was there any major changes that you came across and that you've made?
Well, right now we're still in the process of looking at all of the comments. With respect to the East End district, for example, Norma, we've actually had as I said, a counter proposal from them with respect to the actual boundaries of the zones, etc. We took a look at their response to us, which we'd actually discussed with them in a meeting, I guess before Christmas, early December. And we've now gone back, once Dr. Turner and James Byrne have had a look at the counter proposals with us, we've gone back to them now and said, well, we think that this can work to a certain extent, but if we're going to meet our protection goals, we actually need to put some no-take areas in place here. And so we've made a proposal back to them, and we're waiting to get their final response on that right now. So I guess that's one example. And like I said, we're meeting with Mr. Miller from Northside today, so we don't exactly know what they're going to propose yet. So we're still very much actually in the process of making those amendments. We don't have a final proposal yet. I think probably just take this opportunity to say that once we have made arrived at our final recommendations, we will put the recommended proposals to our ministry, and they will then be in a position to put those to cabinet in order to make the amendments to the marine park regulations. So that's the sort of process from here after we've finished the consideration of the public input.
Do you have any deadline at this stage? When can we expect to see a finalized report?
Yeah, I mean, we're very much hoping that we can get our final proposals into cabinet by early February. That's been our deadline from the beginning. The project itself really comes to a close at the end of March. We have to make our final report to the Darwin Initiative sort of secretariat, and we need to do that by basically the end of March. So we're hoping that we can get the proposals into the ministry early February.
I would just like to add a little further to what Gina was saying about the public involvement. It was very encouraging to see the engagement, the level of engagement we got from districts like East End, Northside, and Cayman Brac. But from a science point of view, it was encouraging for us to also know that we did identify all of the healthy areas around the island, because it was what the argument, so to speak, came about, what you have to give up to ensure that there's ample area to reseed all these other areas outside of the MPAs. And that has been an engagement process that she has talked about with the different districts on how do we achieve our goals of ensuring that we have basically a breeding population to replenish or reseed the outside areas, while at the same time allowing tradition and the Caymanian way of life, so to speak, of how they operate, whether it's fishing, conching, lobstering, or any activity that they want to continue.
Did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Wendy from Cayman News Service. I'd like to just check about the situation as far as the ministry is concerned, and then cabinet. Obviously, there's no secret that the former premier wasn't too supportive of your proposals. Do you have any comfort at the moment about how your minister feels about where those proposals as they were put to the public, and how that's going to sit, and whether he will be in a position to steer it through cabinet, because he's not been terribly supportive of the National Conservation Law? So I'm just trying to see whether you guys are doing all this work, but when you present it to Minister Scotland, are you confident that he's going to be backing you, or especially now that of the change, etc., or do you still think it might be more sensible to hold off and wait till the next administration?
I think that we very much are approaching this from the perspective that we started a process 3 years ago, and we sort of had timelines built into the project that we were running with our partner agencies. And we have, I think, kept to that timeline and have made all of the sort of the deadlines and the sort of points we needed to get to. We've gotten there on time, and I just think we're going to push this forward because we're running a process that's sort of not. Obviously we have to take the political climate into account, but I think that from our perspective, we think the important thing is to be able to demonstrate the public support for the proposals. And we very much hope that we can demonstrate that we have worked with the community. The community were provided lots of opportunity to give us their feedback on the proposals, and I think that really what our ministry and our minister needs to see, and he did attend the Bodden Town meeting with us, so he did have a sense then, I think, of what people were saying both in support of and some of the concerns that people were raising. So I think that he, as long as he's going to be comfortable that there has been adequate opportunity for the public to see and understand what's being proposed, and also have a level of comfort that the majority of the public feedback has been positive, I'm very hopeful that that we will see it taken forward.
I think it is also worth adding that at the Cayman Islands government reception in London, this project was highlighted by the government as being of great interest, meeting the required environmental priorities. It was highlighted alongside the Blue Iguana Conservation Project as well, but by your ministers at that meeting in front of many UK government ministers as well. So I think it's this project has become quite high profile, and I'm sure the government recognises its importance, and the comments from the public, and in the end the public support, are what are going to matter in terms of actually putting in an enhanced marine protected area in place. It is quite clear that both government and local people are beginning to realise how critical it is to have areas that are conserved to ensure that the future of the marine resources of Cayman are guarded. We don't know what many of the future impacts are going to be, so it's most important that we have a resilient system in place as early as possible.
Monica from Cayman 27. Obviously, a lot of people, fishing is a big part of Caymanian tradition, and some people are saying this is going to destroy our fishing, our hobby. But I noticed that you've mentioned this could actually increase fishing opportunities in the future. So how would you kind of reassure those people that their hobby of fishing and their tradition and culture isn't going to die out?
Well, a big part of the reason for the marine protected areas is to ensure that there is the opportunity in the future for people to still catch fish. A lot of the work that we've done over the last 3 years in particular has been looking at the whole question of the impact of extracting quite large amount of reef fish off of the reefs around Cayman. And that's come to the surface as one of the main concerns that we need to address moving forward. And the fact of the matter is that reef fish are a really important component of the marine ecosystem in its totality. And if we disturb the balance in the populations of reef fish by extracting too many, and particularly by extracting too many of a certain type of fish, that's going to be a really bad situation moving forward for the coral reefs. So we'll end up with a situation where no one is really happy because the diving will not be very good because the reefs will be overgrown with algae and not look very attractive, but also there will be no fish for people to catch. So that's what Croy and Tim were alluding to earlier, was this whole idea that we really have been encouraging people as we've been out to the public to switch the way they're thinking about marine protected areas away from the idea that we're taking more away from them and restricting them further, to thinking about this as more of an investment in their future, that we have to put these areas aside or there will be nothing left in the future.
And would you say this would affect us globally as well? Obviously, a big part of our tourist industry is diving. So do local people need to kind of think about that aspect of things as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that reliance on the marine environment in one way or another as economic opportunity here in the island is obvious to everybody. And I think that the importance of a healthy marine environment from an economic perspective is something we've obviously talked a lot about over the last 26 years, and more particularly in the last 3, and while we've been going around to the public. But then it also goes back to this whole question about a healthy marine environment being such a really important component of the Caymanian identity in one way or another. People identify with healthy, vibrant marine communities, and it is all part of the Caymanian identity. It's one of the reasons that we get pushed back on, because people feel somehow that, more of their heritage, more of their sort of identity is being taken away. But as I have said, we just really need to think about the what if we don't set some of this aside and protect it, so that there can still continue to be these resources available in the future.
Could I just add also to that, just to come back to the first point about people being concerned that they're losing their fishing. If you look at the maps as it's proposed, it's still the fishing has definitely been the main theme of what we've been working towards, but we've worked into the system this time some fishing concession slots. So the parks have been designed with this idea, the scientific principle of spillover, fish move from marine protected areas into the areas that are available for fishing, and people benefit from that. So you'll see on the design, you'll see those kind of things have been introduced. But more importantly, the no-take zones are still, we're aiming at 50% at the moment, but or between 40 to 50%, which still means that in theory half of the island is open to fishing, which, to put it in even more basic terms, is that every other fish is available to be taken, if you wanted to look at it like that. So there's still the ability to fish around Cayman. It's not being taken away completely. There was some miscommunications that the idea of not being able to fish from shore to the drop-off was around the entire island. That wasn't the case. It's only within the marine reserves, as we're going to call them, or the current marine parks. So that there is definitely still a lot of room for fishing in the system that we've put together. Yes, some people may have lost their traditional fishing grounds if the plans do go ahead, but that comes back to the point that Gina just made about having to make sacrifices.
Even further to that, I think we got to keep coming back to the principle that of the facts of a marine reserve or a marine park is the fact that you are ensuring that there's either a stable or a growing population. Like what Tim said, the spillover, they all can't live in one house, so to speak, and they will move out, and they become that's an opportunity for fishermen then to fish the fish. And in simple terms, it basically, the marine reserves are like money in the bank. I've repeated this a few times. Then you live off the interest, which is a spillover to adjacent areas. And that ensures that, again, that the population of the Cayman Islands can continue to fish, and ensuring that the tradition continues and the Caymanian way of life. Without that, you can keep fishing till there's nothing left, and you lose that part of your culture, and economically it will be damaging down the road. So you're not only ensuring the future of the Cayman Islands as tourism as one of the pillars of our economy, but you're also ensuring on a local scale the Caymanian way of life.
Carsley Fuller, Radio Cayman. Just real quick, when you guys do have the new proposals prepared, are those going to be available to the public before they go to cabinet?
Yes, I mean, I think we intend to publish the revised proposals. I think it's fair the public get to see those.
My only concern would be that then they'll get all cranky again and they'll come and you'll see a big group of people saying, oh, this stuff isn't going to work. I mean, have you got a contingency plan for how you deal with that? Okay, guys, we've given you all the opportunities, you've commented, and this is it. We're not doing anything else.
I mean, I think that, you know, the whole purpose of the public consultation was to get the public's feedback. And, you know, I've stressed the number of opportunities that we made available to the public to come in and see the proposals, come out to meetings, see them on TV and the website and Facebook. We had stakeholder meetings, quite a number of stakeholder meetings during the public consultation stage with groups as well as individuals. You know, we had several individuals who asked to have one-on-one meetings with us, and we dropped everything and met with them sometimes for, you know, several hours talking through the proposals. So I really am very hopeful that everybody who wanted to make any input to the proposals to to affect change in the proposals had the opportunity to do that. So we're very hopeful that particularly with the district feedback that we're getting from East End and hopefully North Side now, we can move forward. I think in the interest of full disclosure, no one's asked us about the Brac. The Brac was also one of our difficult meetings in that it was quite well attended. There was a lot of support from individuals at the meeting, but following the meeting, we were presented, the minister was presented with a petition from a number of Brac residents basically saying they didn't want to see any changes in the marine parks. And I think you'll recall from past presentations that we've made to you and to also as we've gone out to the public that the Brac, unfortunately, has been or not been the recipient, I should say, of really well designed marine parks in the first place. The results that we got practically in all of our studies show the Brac as sort of being different, and Tim and Croy can speak, and John can speak more to that. But we believe that some of the sort of skewed results that we see from the Brac stem from the fact that the Brac parks were not large enough in the first place and may not have been big enough and well placed enough to deal with the issues that we were trying to manage back in 1986. So it is concerning to us that that the Brac sort of felt it necessary, even after we took we went to great lengths to explain why we thought the results were skewed from the Brac, and why, in fact, we felt that they, of all the islands, really needed to have a sort of an enhanced system of marine parks. We're hoping that the people who support the parks and the Brac can continue to make their support known to their representatives, so that there can be some sort of counter, if you like, to the petition that's come forward. But I'd just like to reiterate that even taking into account the signatures on the petition, that about 2/3 of all the feedback that we got, which includes that petition, was positive. So I think that's still a really good and positive indicator of the support that's out there in the public for the proposals.
And the Brac, to sort of start with, is a bit of a red herring in the sense that it has the one of our studies pointed out it has the highest fishing pressure, and we know it has the smallest shelf area of the 3 islands. That is a combination for wrecking the fisheries in the end. Most of the studies show the most healthiest areas are outside of the MPA system, which is counterproductive again. And the evidence is sort of there in the sense that most of the fishing that happens there now is further offshore, because they have sort of stripped the near shore, so they're fishing more the pelagic, such as the ocean triggers and wahoo, dolphin, the fishery offshore. That is evident around the whole region of what happens when you start depleting the reef fish. You move on further away and fish. We have identified the areas that are the healthiest over there, and as my director indicated, we have engaged with them they have to make sacrifices if they are going to have a vibrant and functioning marine ecosystem down the road. So we are hoping they will engage again and put forward a fair plan, ensuring that the Brac recovers and to a state where it was back in the 70s. I always go back to when as being from Cayman Brac, is when the island was really a vibrant and functioning island, not only on the economic side, but on the marine side, we transferred to economic gain for the island. And that's one of the wishes I would like to see reversed and down the road and move on.
Anyone else?
Thank you. Just to try and clarify more specific details of the marine park, did you get very much feedback about specific things like banning shark fishing and things like protecting the stingrays outside of the wildlife interaction zones and things like that? Can you be any sort of specifics like that we can get some update on?
Yeah, they were going through the comments. While those proposals weren't a part, obviously, of the marine parks themselves, we got comments on a number of issues that were sort of outside the scope of the marine parks, and obviously, we're taking note of those for the future. Some of those involve protecting stingrays, and I think many of you are aware that there is a current move in the government to create legislation that will give protection to stingrays outside of the wildlife interaction zones because of some of the recent incidences that have highlighted the fact that we need to have that legislation in place. So that's something that's going on outside of this parks review. Protection for sharks, etc. Obviously, within the marine protected areas, the marine reserves, everything's going to be protected. They're proposed as no-take zones. So everything will be protected within those reserves. And again, we're working through OTAP funding with another group of visiting scientists to get more data and more information on our shark populations and our cetacean populations actually around the island. So that is something that we also hope to be able to address in the near future. They're not specifically part of the marine park proposals, but we got quite a number of comments about sharks, about stingrays, about grouper, generally sort of protecting mangroves and seagrasses, which of course we can't do under the current marine conservation law, but we would be better placed to do under, for example, if we got the National Conservation Law passed, that would allow us to give more protection to the actual habitat component of the marine protected areas, which is clearly very important. So, yeah, quite a lot of comments that were outside the scope.
As a follow-up, just as you mentioned, thank you, as a follow-up, can you give us an update on what's happening with the National Conservation Law?
We're meeting with the ministry this afternoon to go through the most recent draft, and I believe that the minister is still actively considering bringing the law forward. as I understand the situation.
Just a follow-up to that question. How soon are we going to see the National Conservation Law?
I don't know. I'm not the person that has to bring it forward. I can't answer that question. That's really something you need to direct to the minister. We're ready to go. It's now sort of a political decision.
Gina, I know you've addressed this at meetings, and I've heard you talk about it, but I just wonder if you could touch on this again. If you expand the marine parks, obviously that's going to take more enforcement resources, and we all know the DOE, just like every other government department, is pretty stretched at the moment. Is there anything you can do to address that, to bring about more enforcement?
Right. I mean, one of the things that we've actually tried to explain as we've gone around is that we don't actually see the new system of marine parks as being more onerous in terms of enforcement requirements for two reasons. One is because the marine reserve areas are proposed as no-take areas. So the rules inside those areas are much clearer for everyone, both people who want to go into the areas as well as our enforcement team and the public observing people in areas. So no one has to wonder, for example, what are they taking? How many are they taking? Is it the right season? Are they the right size? It's, if you're in that area, you shouldn't be in there because it's a no-take area. So it's a much clearer distinction in terms of the enforcement. So the effort is actually not as great in terms of having to decide what's going on in the area and how to respond. But the second point is that many of our marine conservation laws apply all around our coastline. And so we have to enforce the entire coastline now anyway. And we will continue to have to enforce the entire coastline. That doesn't mean that we are not challenged and stretched, as you said, Norma, in terms of our enforcement ability. And we could certainly benefit from additional resources. As you point out, like a lot of other government departments, we've lost posts over the last several years in our enforcement section, and we could certainly do with more. But that's the case with or without the marine parks. We're stretched now, and we will continue to be stretched, but we don't see these new parks as stretching us further.
Can I just add something to that? The process of creating marine protected areas doesn't just sort of end. It's a flexible process. It's an iterative process, and Gina said that we're close to the end of this project, and we are going to be submitting the final design to Cabinet. But there still may be changes along the way. And we're not just withdrawing from this whole process at this stage. We're delighted to be able to say that DEFRA, the Department of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, through the Darwin Initiative, are actually funding a continuation. It's actually a new project, but it's a post-project to the current one, which is really looking at some of the issues that are going to come up in implementing the marine protected area system. So this project is really looking at and ensuring the engagement in the marine protected area system. Part of this project will be looking at enforcement. It will be bringing in some new ways, perhaps, of enforcing. We have some good ideas that we want to test, where we introduce new technology to make enforcement more effective. We're looking at some of the introductions that we're bringing into this system, such as these concessionary fishing slots. And we actually want to measure and test how well these work. And we want to continue to engage with people to find out what they actually think of the measures that have been put in place. We want to see whether being able to fish close to the boundaries of some of the marine protected areas does actually benefit many of the fishermen. So we are actually going to continue to remain engaged in the process. Further, we're going to be looking at some of the newer threats that have really come up during the process of forming the enhanced marine protected areas, such as the impact of lionfish. This has obviously become an important issue. Stakeholders at the public meetings have brought up their concerns, and we're going to ensure that this is addressed during this post-project. So research is going to continue with the Department of the Environment on those areas as well. And another aspect that we're going to be looking at is fish spawning areas. I know this is addressed separately to the main marine protected area system, but it's most important that we're aware not just of where the Nassau grouper spawns, but there are many other species spawning in the Cayman Islands. We need to know the importance of those sites. We need to ensure that the marine protected area is incorporating these sites. And so there's a lot more research to do. And the Nature Conservancy is going to remain in the project. Bangor University is working closely with the Department of the Environment. Some other partners are being involved in this new project who have been working with the Department of the Environment in the past. So Scripps from the USA and also the Reef Foundation. So I think something that's really come from this first Darwin project is increased collaboration, and I think we're really looking forward to continue to work with DOE in the future. Bangor University is going to continue to have a presence. Laura Richardson is the Darwin Project Support Officer, and she's going to remain with the project, supporting the new project. And we're going to continue to have Bangor University researchers coming out and working with the Department of the Environment scientists. We have a very strong link with Croy McCoy continuing to do his studies on the marine protected areas. And so I think the future is very good for a lot of continued input. So I think we don't want to give the impression that we've done this, we've proposed this with DOE and now we're walking away from it. It's very different from that. We're going to be continuing in the future to ensure that the Marine Protected Areas system is a success and that it works for the benefit of the people of Cayman.
Yeah. I'd like to just add on that a little bit. And a lot of times we look at this as a project that has been a lot of hard work. As we know with public meetings, a lot of times those are contentious and not necessarily the easiest things to go through, but getting that comment to come in and addressing those, while that is hard work, this is actually the easy part. The easy part is coming up with the design and getting the system designed and planned and enacted. The real challenge is going to be in the future, and that's the management of these areas. And we are committed to make sure that these work, and they work how they should. And the best way to do that is to help out with the management and really make sure that the management is in place and is continuing on into the future, and that we have the support of the local communities that are there. Because really we can design it and we can do it and it could be heavy-handed, but that really won't be success. Enforcement, while it works, the idea is that we don't have to enforce, that the public will accept these and they'll comply, because they really understand where it's at and that they will be supportive of it. And that's really what we're striving towards, is getting to that point where enforcement isn't really as necessary because the public does comply with it, and compliance is an important part of it. And that's really where we see a lot of that effort that John was describing, of getting people more educated, more engaged on it, and working with those to really move towards that point.
Just have one quick follow-up question, Dr. Turner. Is funding already in place for the post project, and if so, how much?
Funding is in place, yes, for the post project. The funding from DEFRA is just under £200,000 over the next 18 months. But if you look at the funding that the project draws in, it's considerably more than that. In fact, if you look at all the other work in kind, it's close to £500,000 if you wanted to give it a total value. So yes, we've had confirmation that funding is awarded, and that project starts on the 1st of April.
And it's our intention to obviously have, more information come out about this project when we've wrapped up this one and we're formally starting the other one. We'll come forward with more information, specifics about the project, etc. So.
Could I just, what do you mean by work in kind?
Well, obviously there are various partners involved in the project, and the institutions to which they belong are committing resources, people's time, energy, equipment, facilities, are all essentially donated to the project at cost.
And that includes, obviously, the government of the Cayman Islands and through the DOE. Questions? Everybody happy? Thank you all very much for coming out.